1966, Walt Disney famously said, "I don't believe in sequels." Today, Disney has released nearly 250 sequels and 40 live actions. Something catastrophic has happened to the most magical company on earth, and almost nobody talks about the real reason why. I mean, you've clicked on this video, so obviously you've felt this, haven't you? That hollow feeling when you walk out of the latest Disney movie wondering why it felt so empty. There was a time when kids left the theater pretending to be the characters, and families would quote Disney movies for generations to come. But now, kids are bored halfway through and the dialogue is forgotten before the credits even roll. The magic is gone, and Disney is desperately trying to convince you that it's still there. But what Disney doesn't want you to know is that this change wasn't an accident. This wasn't some gradual decline or natural evolution. What happened to Disney was calculated, planned, and it represents one of the most shocking corporate transformations in entertainment history. So how did this company that gave us Pinocchio, Bambi, The Lion King, films that defined our childhood, transform into this corporate machine? How did we go from Walt Disney, who would personally review every single frame of animation and reportedly threw out entire sequences if they didn't serve the story, to modern Disney executives who view iconic characters as nothing more than existing IP waiting to be exploited? Everyone has theories. It's woke politics, it's corporate greed, it's the death of hand-drawn animation. But the real answer is far more disturbing than any of these surface-level explanations. The transformation didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't the result of a single decision or executive. The truth involves backroom deals, a hostile corporate takeover that most people don't even know happened, and a fundamental betrayal of everything that Disney once stood for. And the weird part is, Disney is bigger than ever, like insanely big. They own Marvel, they own Pixar, they own Star Wars, they own Fox, they own your childhoods, your fandoms, and at this point, world domination doesn't seem that far off. With that kind of reach and that kind of budget, they should be killing it. They should be revolutionizing storytelling all over again. But instead, they're releasing unoriginal slop after slop, and I can't take it anymore. Walt Disney built an empire on a simple promise: respect your audience's intelligence and they'll follow you anywhere. Modern Disney operates on the exact opposite principle. Treat your audience like walking wallets and steal their money before they even realize what's happening. So what really happened here? When did Disney stop being a creative company and become a content farm? Who made the decisions that transformed beloved characters into corporate mascots? And why does Disney keep making the same mistakes over and over again, even as their movies fail and their reputation crumbles? The answers will shock you. If you're like me and you've been wondering what on earth has happened to Disney, then you're in the right place, because this isn't just a Disney sucks now rant, this is a full-on investigation. So strap yourselves in and get ready, because what I'm about to uncover might just ruin your childhood. Before we start, I just wanted to let you know that a little birdie told me if you subscribe to this channel, you will get 10 years of good luck. I don't know, that's just what they said. Okay, before we talk about what went wrong with Disney, we need to understand what went right. Because as hard as it is to imagine, Disney wasn't always this big corporate juggernaut with its fingers in every franchise. It was something much more simple and powerful. A scrappy, sometimes chaotic, deeply personal dream led by one man with a very specific vision: Walt Disney. He wasn't out there chasing box office records. He wasn't looking at data analytics or sequel potential. He was obsessed with storytelling, obsessed with pushing boundaries no one else even knew existed. He lit the fuse for what would become one of the most influential creative eras in film history. Today we call it the golden age of Disney, and even though most of us weren't alive when it began, we still feel its influence everywhere because this is where the magic was born. Picture this, it's 1934 and Walt Disney gathers his top artists in a cramped storyboard room at his studio. He's about to pitch to them the most insane idea in Hollywood history. He wants to make a full-length animated movie, not some 7-minute cartoon, but a feature film that would run for over an hour. It would be about a fairy tale with singing and dancing, and he wanted people to sit in the theaters and actually take it seriously. His own wife thought he was losing his mind. His brother Roy tried to talk him out of it, and Hollywood executives laughed and called it Disney folly. Everyone thought it was a terrible idea. I mean, a full-length animated film, that was unheard of. It was risky, it was expensive, and technically impossible. Until Walt Disney made it happen. I'm of course talking about the iconic movie Snow White. Now, this wasn't just some low-effort project, he put everything into this movie. It had 750 storyboard artists who had nearly 2 million separate paintings to complete. Hundreds of animators, painters, and designers worked frame by frame, hand-drawing every detail. They built custom animation cameras, they invented new techniques for depth and lighting. Every second of that film was handcrafted. But here's what made Disney different to every other studio. Walt didn't want to just make a movie, he wanted to create art. He encouraged all the staff to contribute to the story, offering $5 for every gag that they can come up with. Such jokes included the dwarfs' noses popping over the foot of the bed when they first meet Snow White. This is someone who had true care for the story they were creating, and it's clear that he wanted to do the best job possible. All this in-depth work meant that the production took around 3 years to complete, with a budget of $1.4 million. To put that into perspective, most live-action films at the time were made for around $300,000. Disney was spending nearly 5 times the budget of a typical movie on an animated fairy tale that nobody believed would work. And when it finally premiered, people cried. They literally sobbed in the theater. They cried because they had never seen anything like it. This wasn't just animation, it was art, it was cinema, it was something bigger than anyone thought cartoons could be. Viewers were shocked and confused at how they could feel so connected to what they assumed was just a silly little animated movie. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece, and Walt Disney actually received a Special Academy Award, saying that the film was a significant screen innovation which has charmed millions and pioneered a great new entertainment field. They even gave him the most adorable little Oscar, which I am just obsessed with. It was clear from that point on that Disney was just on another level when it came to making movies. Their animators didn't just draw characters, they studied them. They brought real live deer into the studio to study their movements for Bambi. They hired real actors to perform scenes so animators could study human expressions and gestures. They built elaborate sets and filmed live-action reference footage because Disney believed that animation should feel as real and emotionally authentic as any other live-action film. That's the level of ambition that Disney operated on. They didn't play it safe, they pioneered. In 1940, Pinocchio came next, pushing visual effects and storytelling even further. In the same year, Fantasia was released, which was basically an experimental symphony brought to life. And then came Bambi in 1942, a movie so gentle and heartbreaking it made generations of kids rethink how they viewed nature and grief. These early films weren't just technically impressive, they were emotionally intelligent. They were never dumbed down for kids. They trusted the audience to handle sadness, fear, death, loneliness, and they did it without ever feeling cynical or manipulative. That, to me, was the real magic of Disney's golden age, not just the animation, but the deep respect that they had for their audience. Walt Disney never talked down to children. He never assumed that family entertainment meant simple or stupid, which is something modern kids' movies struggle so much with. There is zero care that goes into them. It is all just potty humor and meaningless storylines. I've spoken about this a lot on my channel, and it actually makes me quite emotional for some reason, but I absolutely hate when people say, oh, it's just a kids movie, it's not meant to be good. Where on earth did that come from? Why shouldn't children have emotionally intelligent films that teach them lessons and stick with them for more than just an hour? And it's not just kids that watch them, it's their families that take them. It's people like me who watch all types of movies. Do we not deserve good stories? It's so frustrating, and that is why I miss this era when Walt Disney understood that it wasn't just kids in his audience, it was families. Parents and children sitting together, sharing an experience. So he crafted films that worked on multiple levels. Children could enjoy the surface level stories, the comedy, the songs, and adults could appreciate the artistry, the sophisticated scenes, and the emotional depth. This approach created something magical, films that could be watched and rewatched throughout a person's lifetime, revealing new layers of meaning as the viewer grows older. A child might watch Snow White and see a princess adventure. A teenager might see themes of jealousy and growing up. An adult might see a tale of beauty, aging, and self-worth. Earth. The same film spoke to different audiences simultaneously without condescending any of them. The Golden Age established Disney's relationship with its audience built on trust and respect. It was clear their main goal wasn't to solely make money. Of course they needed to survive as a business, but its heart was always creative. Disney didn't try to trick viewers or manipulate them with cheap tactics. They didn't focus group their stories to death or change endings based on test screenings. They told the stories they wanted to tell with integrity and passion, trusting that audiences would respond to quality. And that respect, that trust between Disney and its audience built an unshakable bond. People didn't just like Disney movies, they believed in them. They collected VHS tapes like treasure. They passed them down to their kids. They learned the songs from heart because those films were more than just kids' films. Whether they were adapted from fairy tales, legends, or Shakespeare, they were crafted to resonate on a deep level, no matter how old you were. What's wild is that during this era, Disney was still making mostly original content, but they did still adapt different stories and folklore, but the difference is that they did it with intention. They weren't just reskinning old IPs for quick cash, they were reinterpreting them, building new worlds around them, and making them their own. They respected their audience enough to take risks, to tell complex stories, to trust that quality would find its audience. And that attitude didn't stop with animation. Walt Disney was constantly pushing boundaries of what was possible. When people said, you can't build a theme park based on your animated stories, he built Disneyland. When people said, you can't mix animation with live action, he made Mary Poppins. He wasn't just innovating, he was inventing. Half of the tools and techniques that the film industry still use today, Disney's team built them from scratch. What I'm trying to say is that Disney's golden age proved something important about entertainment and art. That you could make films that were both profitable and meaningful. That audiences, including children, would respond to sophisticated storytelling if you gave them a chance. And that if you treat your audience with respect, they will stay with you for life. But that era is sadly gone, and the more you look back at what Disney used to be, the harder it is to ignore what they've become. Because the truth is, the golden age didn't just simply fade away, it was left behind, and once you understand why, everything starts to make sense. If the golden age of Disney was defined by bold artistic choices and storytelling first decisions, then what followed could be best described as a slow and steady corporate infestation. It wasn't an overnight collapse because Disney didn't just wake up one day and suddenly decide to stop caring, but it was more like a gradual transformation where business strategy started to quietly overshadow creative ambition. So where exactly did this shift happen? After the death of Walt Disney in 1966, the company started to stray a bit creatively, but it still carried the weight of his legacy. For decades, the company had enjoyed back-to-back hits. The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Mulan, Tarzan. These weren't just popular, they were revolutionary. But like any high, it was temporary. Audiences moved on, competition emerged, and technology was changing. By the time we got to films like Atlantis: The Lost Empire in 2001 or Treasure Planet in 2002, Disney wasn't the automatic global sensation it used to be. But here's where things went wrong, because instead of pivoting creatively, they decided to pivot strategically. They looked at that dip in box office performance and started asking the wrong questions. Instead of asking how do we evolve artistically, they started asking how do we guarantee profit, and that is where the real shift began. At the center of this shift was a man named Michael Eisner, who stepped in as CEO in 1984. Eisner's approach to Disney was a sharp turn from Walt's original vision. Although in his early years, Eisner did champion creativity, even going as far as to host casual brainstorming retreats at his farmhouse where he invited executives and story artists to pitch bold original ideas. And those meetings paid off drastically. It was during one of them that the concept of Lilo and Stitch was born, a project Eisner backed so fully that he gave the creator Chris Sanders complete creative control to bring it to life. Whilst Eisner initially brought success to the company, building up the animation department and expanding the company's reach, he also introduced something that Walt famously resisted: a focus on sequels and franchises. Shortly before he died, Walt Disney was asked his opinion on sequels and if he'd create any in the future, to which he responded, "By nature, I'm an experimenter. To this day, I don't believe in sequels. I can't follow popular cycles. I have to move on to new things." Eisner heard that, he knew the legacy, and then he basically gave a middle finger to Walt's grave because under his leadership, Disney started started experimenting. Starting in the mid-90s, Disney began pumping out these low-budget sequels to their beloved classics. The Return of Jafar, Cinderella 2, The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, Pocahontas 2, Bambi 2. The list just goes on and on. I mean, there's even a Lion King 1.5. I'm so serious. Some of you probably had no idea these movies even existed, and that's because they just went straight to DVD. Yep, this was Disney's era of direct-to-DVD sequels. They weren't made to tell meaningful stories, they weren't passion projects, they were cheap and easy cash grabs. Basically Disney's side hustle. These sequels were the first real time that Disney saw its legacy as not art to protect, but as something to profit from. The real transformation began in 2005 when the one and only Bob Iger replaced Eisner as the CEO of the company. And I mean the one and only in a terrifying way. You see, Bob Iger's vision for Disney was radically different from anything the company had embraced before. Where Walt Disney built his empire on original storytelling and complex animation techniques, Iger's strategy centered on assets and franchise management. He basically took everything that Disney had built, squashed it up, and threw it out the window like it meant nothing, all to just start on his own terms. In the early 2000s, traditional 2D animation had hit a breaking point. After a series of box office flops like Home on the Range, Disney was at a loss for what to do next. As a result, Disney made the decision to close its hand-drawn animation department permanently in 2004, fully pivoting to CGI. Which is honestly so sad. A big reason for this change was that during this period, Pixar was absolutely dominating the scene, stealing all the attention away from Disney. Toy Story, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, those films were everything Disney used to be. Original, emotional, experimental, and it was starting to make Disney look outdated. So, what do we think Bob Iger's grand plan to fix Disney was? Does he go back to square one? Does he launch another golden age? Not even close. He buys Pixar. No, literally, he buys the company for $7.4 billion. Well, I mean, if you can't beat him, you might as well force them to join your team. In some ways, this was a smart move. Pixar's creative leadership brought new energy to the company, and this worked well for a while. Films like Tangled, Frozen, and Zootopia brought back some of the spark. They were visually stunning, musically catchy, and emotionally intelligent. But over time, even Pixar began feeling the pressure of the corporate machine, and sequels started dominating their release schedule. Cars 2, Finding Dory, The Incredibles 2, Lightyear. It wasn't about telling new stories anymore, it was about maximizing the value of existing characters. For Disney, this was an absolute win. It didn't matter that they were slowly starting to lose their hardcore fans, they couldn't see it happening over the money piling in. And things just get crazier from here. In 2009, Disney went on to buy Marvel Entertainment for $4 billion. They weren't just buying a creative studio, they were purchasing an entire universe of characters with decades of existing storylines, fan loyalty, and built-in merchandise opportunities. At the time, Disney released a statement trying to justify this purchase. They said that Marvel adds great IP that benefits multiple Disney businesses for years to come and continue to create value well in excess of their purchase price. Notice the language being used here. Great IP, create value. This wasn't the language of storytellers, this was the language of business. But it didn't stop there, because then came the big one on October 30th, 2012. Disney announced that they were purchasing Lucasfilms, aka Star Wars, for $4 billion, with approximately half of that in cash and half of that in Disney stocks. George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, had built something that rivaled Disney's own cultural impact. It was more than just a movie franchise, it captured imaginations for generations. Each one of these purchases represented more than just business deals, they were strategic pivots away from Disney's core identity. Instead of investing in developing original properties or nurturing creative voices, Disney essentially just decided to buy the competition. Walt Disney had built his company by taking risks on new technologies, innovative storytelling techniques, and original characters. He created Mickey Mouse from nothing. He pioneered feature-length animation with Snow White. He invented the modern theme park with Disneyland. Every single major Disney innovation innovation came from creative risk-taking and original thinking. But Bob Iger's Disney was about minimizing creative risk and purchasing proven properties. Why develop new characters when you can just buy established ones? Why create new worlds when you can just acquire existing universes? Because the more Disney expanded, the more diluted its identity became. The studio that once stood for original storytelling was now playing IP monopoly. Everything became about marketable universes, and slowly but surely, everything started to feel the same. Even Frozen, which started off as a fresh new fairy tale, turned into a corporate machine. There's Frozen 2 with a Frozen 3 confirmed. There's a Toy Story 5, there's a Moana sequel, and a live-action remake just a year apart. We are quite literally watching Disney repeat itself in real time without offering anything new. And the saddest part is that it's working. These movies make money, they trend, they go viral, and for every critical flop, Disney knows that they can just pivot to the next big nostalgia bait. Because the Disney brand has become the product, not the story. So no, the decline of Disney wasn't one big scandal or some dramatic betrayal, it was slow and subtle. It was the leadership that prioritized expansion over innovation. It was a culture that started rewarding predictability over originality. It was a shift from what story do we want to tell to what IP haven't we exploited yet. And that brings us to where we are today, and as you probably know, it's not a good place. Disney has been putting out slop after slop, and it's reached a breaking point with fans. You've probably forgotten most of these flops already because your brain is trying to protect itself, but it's movies like Strange World, Wish, Lightyear, The Marvels, Haunted Mansion, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. These weren't tiny passion projects with low expectations. These were massive budget, heavily marketed Disney theatrical releases, and they still flopped. Let's talk about the movie Wish for a second. This was Disney's big 100th anniversary movie, 100 years of storytelling, and what did they give us? A film that felt more like a brand campaign than a celebration of legacy. It tried to shove all these references and Easter eggs into a single runtime, but completely forgot to bring the soul along with it. The story was forgettable, the songs were terrible, and the characters felt like they were AI generated. And then there's Lightyear, a movie that was supposed to explore the real story behind Buzz from Toy Story. It sounds like a fun concept in theory, but in practice, it left people more confused than excited. No one ever asked for this to be made. It didn't really tie into the Toy Story universe, and worst of all, it just wasn't that interesting. It wasn't bad, it was just meh. And that's maybe the biggest crime of all, because Disney used to be allergic to being average. They didn't just want to entertain you, they wanted to move you, challenge you, stick with you. That bar is gone and we feel it. That, ladies and gentlemen, was when we started getting live action remakes. Not reimaginings, not reinterpretations, but remakes. Cinderella, The Jungle Book, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, The Lion King, Mulan, The Little Mermaid. One by one, Disney redid its classics, not because they had a new artistic take, but because the name alone guaranteed views. And here's the thing, these movies weren't made for fans of the originals. They were made to exploit our nostalgia while selling a new shiny version to younger audiences. Yeah, sure, they might be technically impressive, but they were hollow and soulless, because no one making these films seemed to love the story. They just loved the IP and the easy money it brought in. Take The Lion King, for example. Yes, it made over $1 billion, but every review had the same core complaint. Stunning visuals, but lifeless execution. The animals looked so real they couldn't emote. Every line felt flat. The magic of the original, the emotional depth, the stylized animation, the expressive faces were all gone. I also just don't get the point of remaking it. If the entire thing is shot for shot CGI, then how is that different to just normal animation? There was just no need for it. We also have the 2025 remake of Snow White, which was a mess before it even hit theaters. The visuals were flat, the charm was stripped, and the reworked story felt like it was trying to prove a point instead of tell one. There was so much drama behind the scenes with the cast, and those CGI dwarves did not help in the slightest. Just look at them! In trying to modernize a classic, Disney ended up losing the very thing that made it timeless. And don't even get me started on Peter Pan and Wendy or Pinocchio video with Tom Hanks. These movies dropped straight onto Disney Plus with almost zero hype. They immediately got roasted online, and Disney tried to quickly bury them because even Disney seems to know they're not making classics anymore. They're making fast, disposable, forgettable content. This isn't just about individual movies anymore, it's about a shift in culture, and a big part of that problem is that Disney doesn't see itself as a storytelling studio anymore. It sees itself as a content empire, and empires don't take risks, they protect their assets. And in 2025, that means IP, algorithms, and streaming strategy. This is where Disney Plus comes in. Streaming was supposed to be the future, but for Disney, it turned into a curse. The success of the platform completely changed how they view their audience. Now, it's not about delivering a great film, it's about delivering constant output, new shows, new shorts, new spin-offs. Keep the content cycle going, keep the subscribers entertained. And Disney keeps putting out the most random content on there, like Cars on the Road, which is a mini-series about Lightning McQueen. This low-effort content completely floods Disney Plus, and it makes it so hard to find anything actually worth watching. When Disney does actually premiere an amazing movie straight to the platform, like Luca, Turning Red, and Soul, they often get immediately overlooked. There is just too much content on the platform, and soon everyone moves on to the next big thing. Soul is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it deserves way more hype than it got. So I'm gonna do Disney's job for them and tell everybody to go and watch this movie if you haven't, and I promise you, you will thank me later. The reason why these straight-to-streaming movies are problematic is because it devalues the art. It trains audiences to see these movies like Soul as just another drop, and that mindset is toxic. It teaches people, and worse, the studio, that the work doesn't matter as long as it's new. But the fans, the audiences who grew up crying at The Lion King or dreaming of an adventure in Atlantis, they notice, they feel the shift, and they're starting to push back. And it's not just fans noticing, it's creatives too. Pixar employees have spoken about burnout. VFX artists at Marvel have come forward about being overworked and underpaid. Writers and animators are frustrated by the pressure to chase trends rather than create meaning. The magic behind the scenes is fading too, so what now? Can Disney come back from this? Honestly, it's hard to say. They've built an empire on nostalgia, but nostalgia only works when it means something. You can't fake soul, you can't manufacture magic. And if Disney doesn't start listening to their artists, their fans, and their own legacy, then I fear that they will soon reach the point of no return. Because the thing is, people want to love Disney again. I've done so many videos criticizing the recent Disney releases, but guys, I don't want them to fail. I just want them to start caring again. Fans are just tired of watching something we once adored become a hollow version of itself, and we don't want to put up with it anymore. And judging by the fact that they decided to pause the production of the live-action Tangled after the Snow White backlash, maybe they're finally listening. So yeah, this might be rock bottom, but maybe this is the point where Disney realizes it can't buy its way out of low effort anymore. Maybe they start listening to their creatives again. Maybe they stop treating art like products. Maybe they remember what their brand actually stood for in the first place. Or maybe not. Maybe they double down. Maybe we get 10 more lifeless remakes and a Frozen 5 multiverse of madness. But either way, people are starting to pay attention now. The magic is gone, and what's left is a company that's gonna have to work if it wants to win back the trust it once had. But honestly, I don't know why I keep hoping. They have had so many opportunities and they just keep getting it wrong, so maybe we just give up? I don't know, but I'm gonna be optimistic and still have hope. And that is the end of today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Comment down below and tell me if you've given up with Disney or if you're still holding out hope. And also, if you made it this far, comment the word Spider-Man so I can see who the real ones are. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I cannot even tell you how grateful I am for all the support. It has been absolutely insane, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!